not a boy defined by illness, but rather a sharp, happy, funny young man who simply put a joy to those around him. I imagine you're wondering what brought Sim into contact with Children's Miracle Network. Sim has a brain tumor. It is a grade 2 astrocytoma with grade 3 characteristics. It is located in the middle of his head, growing up from the top of the brainstem. I imagine he's not what you would expect to see when you hear the words brain tumor. A year ago, Sim started crossing one eye. My husband had something similar happen when he was young, and getting glasses corrected it. We watched to see if it would clear up on its own. It persisted but did not get worse. In June, I was talking to him one night, and he started making unusual hums and chirps. When I asked him why he was making those sounds, he said his throat was hurt. I made an appointment with our family doctor. I didn't come right out and say my concern was a brain tumor, but my stated concerns pointed that way. Thankfully, we were referred to an imaging facility so that Sim could have an MRI the next day. Since the images that needed to be taken required Sim to be perfectly still, he had to be anesthetized. About an hour later, I went to the recovery room with Sim and the nurse. Figured he'd shake it off, I'd take him home, and then we'd get the results in a few days. Instead, the radiologist appeared in the doorway and motioned me out of the room. At that moment, I knew what she was going to say. She walked me into the next recovery room to tell me there was a mass in his brain. She had already spoken to the neurosurgeon who instructed us to check Sim into the hospital that day. That moment, that day, June 18, 2009, was the worst day of my life. I braced myself for the call I had to make to my husband. Then I had to instantly pull myself back together to walk into Sim's recovery room with a confident smile on my face. We didn't get to meet the surgeon until almost lunchtime the next day. That was the beginning of a never-ending series of hurry up and wait. The surgeon pulled up the MRI images of the almost ping-pong ball-sized tumor on the room's computer and laid out the game plan. 4 days of steroid therapy to reduce swelling to be followed by surgery to take a biopsy and create a drain. To this day, I can see the image of that MRI when I close my eyes. The dilemma: how were Steve and I supposed to explain to our 6-year-old that he had a brain tumor and that he had to have surgery? The hospital thought of that. They have child life specialists who do that. She did it perfectly. I wouldn't have changed a thing about what she said to him. She even had photos of the rooms and some instruments and machines he'd see on the morning of surgery that allowed him to ask questions. We were grateful for her help since we just didn't know what to say. Once the biopsy results came in about a week later, it was determined that it would need to be removed with surgery. We had to wait almost 6 weeks for the surgery to take place. Sim was so brave during the summer. As August 6 got closer, he would ask more questions about the details of the surgery. I didn't hold back. He asked, I answered. He was always like, okay, and he would go about his business. If he was scared, he never showed it. On the morning of the 6th, he was all smiles when we arrived at the hospital early in the morning to check in. He was all smiles and Priya, and all too quickly it was time to go. In the very sharp hallway to the operating room, where we had to park, is where for the first time I saw his tears. It broke my heart to see that fear. We kissed him, assured him we'd see him again before he knew it, and he was whisked away. We were the first family in the surgical waiting room that day. We watched one family after another come and go. At the end of the day, we were the last family waiting. Then finally we got to see him in the recovery room. He wouldn't wake up like he was supposed to at that point. We had to wait another 21 hours before we got to see those beautiful eyes. The surgeon was able to remove about 90% of the tumor, so now we are on watch duty. Every 3 months, Sim has a sedation MRI. If there's any sign of regrowth, at that time, chemotherapy or radiation will be considered. So far, it appears to not be regenerating, so we are hopeful.